as a whiskey fan, I gotta say one of the best experiences I've ever had. Actually, I've had a couple, and my Express card could prove that. I had maybe a little bit too good of a time. But I was in New York a few times, and I swung by the office, and it's in the back of the aviary in New York City. And beyond having a normal bar and cocktails, they had this case of super rare and super old whiskeys. And granted, some of those 1 ounce pours I had, I don't even remember what they were costing. $400, $700 for 1 ounce or something like that. But some of them they were like 100 years old. Man, maybe even older. I got, some photos somewhere of what the hell I was drinking. But it was more about, I knew it wasn't going to taste like the greatest whiskey I've ever had in my life. I just thought it was cool that, I'm drinking stuff that maybe like Andrew Carnegie was drinking. Like that Industrial Revolution time where this was the type of stuff those industrial barons were drinking. And that's a period of time, late 1800s, early 1900s. I really enjoyed that time period. Industrial manufacturing. But I just started thinking about these like titans of industry, and this is probably the type of booze they were drinking. And I'm drinking something that is that old from that time period. And I found that to be very special. More so than like a 50-year-old scotch that, in my own personal collection, I got bottles that are thousands of dollars and I got bottles that are $60. My favorite all-time scotch is the Balvenie Portwood 21. And I think you can get that you used to be able to get it for like under $200 before COVID. Now it's like $250. Where, I think who knows what a Macallan 18 goes for. Macallan 25, they're selling for like $2,000 or something now. Like you're smoking boulders. I ain't paying that much for a Macallan 25. You're out of your mind. But a good bottle for $250. But it's one of those things that my experience, anyways. I've had 30-year-old scotches, 40-year-old scotches. You often are just paying for the rarity of it. It's not that it's better. It's just that it's more rare. And I think a lot of times we get caught up in our own BS that at the end of the day, you're still drinking whiskey, and it's always going to taste like whiskey. It's always going to taste like scotch. There is a diminishing return at some point on the price. And you can get some amazing bottles for under $100. But to me, it's about the rarity of it is cool. I don't know about this. I'd have to dig in more to see what Balvenie's got and Glenfiddich has. But when I was able to get access to some of those old like bonded whiskeys from like turn of the century, that you felt like a story was coming with it or it took you back to a place in time, that was cool. And I'm willing to pay for that. I don't know if I'm willing to pay crazy amount of money to have access to like a 60-year-old scotch that I guess you'd really have to be a scotch nut, or you'd have to convince yourself that the 60-year-old scotch is going to be that much greater than your $300 scotch. It's cool. This is where we're going. I think you're going to see this happen with, exotic cars and car clubs. You're seeing it with, you can't even get a private airplane right now. It's the wheels up is like, they only let you sign up on their website right now, from what I understand. Private planes are a big deal. Car clubs are a big deal. Private whiskey clubs. Everywhere you go right now, if it's high end, the world kind of got rich in the last 18 months. All this stuff is really starting to take off, where it's private experiences, access to higher end stuff. The average local store, your Benny's in Chicago, is not going to want to stock a $60,000 bottle of scotch. So I can see where these whiskey clubs for the ultra rich are going to probably be pretty cool. But for me anyways, I'm not ultra rich, and I probably will never be. But I just like the idea of having access to things that are older, that are turn of the century. It's that story to me, not so much the taste, which I already talked about. Have you ever had a 30 or 40-year-old Scotch and you turn around and I go have my Balvenie Portwood 21? They're both great. But like what I spend, you know, you can get a Balvenie 40. What do those things cost? Like $4 or $5 a bottle. A good buy is actually a 30-year-old. You used to be able to get a 30-year-old Balvenie for like $9.99. But it's just one of those things that it's diminishing returns at best. You're paying for the rarity. You're paying for an experience. You're paying to be one of the few in the world. But it doesn't mean that dram is going to be instantly a better taste. We might also just be experiencing peak whiskey. You know, every asset class in the world is overinflated. Everything's gotten bumped up. We consume so much stuff that we made everything rare. Kane and I just did another episode on Rolexes. I talked to the Rolex dealer, and I'm like just curious because I saw a thing saying you can't buy a Rolex. I'm like, hey, it's part of a jewelry store that I've bought quite a few things from. So it's like they're not going to lie to me if they, you know, I buy shit from them. They were going to sell me something. I mean, how many Rolexes you got? I'm just curious. And they got 3. They have 3 watches in the whole Rolex boutique of the store. And I want to say that's the #1 Rolex boutique in the state of Michigan. They had 3 28mm gold women's watches, and that's it. And they can't even order a Rolex right now. And they said that if I did want a Rolex, when they can order one, from then it would be 6 to 12 months. So anything that's kind of luxury has been consumed, it's been bought, and we're going to see what happens from here. So again, I don't know if this is just peak whiskey, or we might just have that many ultra wealthy in the world now, with the stock market boom and technology, all this stuff, that you can have your own VIP access whiskey club. I wouldn't mind to have a club like that had like kind of all brands. I mean, this is kind of it's limited to Balvenie and Glenfiddich, but kind of like the Office at the Aviary in New York, where you had access to everything. Like that kind of club sounds cool, but you just had a boatload of high-end rare whiskeys just for 2 distilleries. It's not that exciting to me anyways. But anyways, if you never had the Balvenie Portwood 21, my favorite one of all time, try that sometime. Also bang for $1 of a bottle, $250. You know, again, a Balvenie 30 you might be able to get for $1,000, or a Macallan 25 is going for $2,000 plus. And I know the Macallan fans out there go, oh, but it's Macallan. It's like, well, I got Macallan on the shelf, don't get me wrong. I like it. But I'm not one of those people that's, I'm not a fanboy of Macallan. I buy it, I drink it, I like it. But I don't know if it's the gold standard anyways. Maybe it was a one time, I don't know about now. Anyways, that's all I got for this one. Drop your favorite whiskey or scotch below. I mean, we can get a whole conversation about Canadian whiskey, bourbon, scotch. If you've ever done Whiskey Fest, like I used to fly around and do those with friends. I've done Chicago, I've done New York. We actually flew out to San Francisco just to do Whiskey Fest that night, and then we flew back. They were fun. You go out, get a big ass steak dinner. You go try a bunch of whiskeys and stumble around the city half lit. You know, it's always a good time. But anyways, that's all I got for this one. I'm going to catch you on the next one.